Welcome, everyone. Welcome to another round of PCL Reads. This month, we are so excited to partner with Trinity Rep to talk about August Wilson. So normally we virtually travel to a library. Today, we're virtually traveling to Trinity Rep. So it's very exciting. We have a nice community partner. Joining us tonight is Michelle Cruz. She's the Director of Community Engagement at Trinity Rep. And she selected the book this month that we read by August Wilson, How I Learned What I Learned. And she's going to give us a nice rundown of his life, the play that we're reading, the play that's going on right now at Trinity Rep. And it's going to be a fun night talking all about August Wilson. So I'm going to turn it over to Michelle briefly, and then we're going to pull a raffle winner too.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Michelle Cruz, like Emmy said, and I'm the Director of Community Engagement here at Trinity Rep. I'm also the host of a class if you want to sign up for next time. It's called 10 Weeks with August Wilson, the American Century Cycle. We started that a couple of weeks back now. We're on the fourth play, but it's we read his plays one for each decade, once a week, and people really enjoy it. So I can send out information about that if anyone is interested. But yeah, welcome to How I Learned What I Learned, the book club. I'm really excited to talk about this. I saw the one-person show a while ago, and it was really, really interesting to kind of delve into it that way. For those who don't know, August Wilson, starred in the first run of this show, which is pretty cool, which I wish I could have seen before he passed. But are we going to select the winner first? Okay.
Sure.
I'm really excited.
Yeah, we can do that. I'm just entering the last couple of names into the Wheel of Fortune, I guess.
Wheel of Names.
Wheel of Names. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Similar to Wheel of Fortune.
True. It does look like a Wheel of Fortune wheel. Or
we're not giving anybody money though.
True. Okay. I just need to enter a couple more names in here.
Sure.
Let's see. Great.
One of you lucky friends tonight will get tickets to see the show.
Yeah, exactly. So we're giving away a pair of pit tickets, which is great, which is fun.
Okay.
Let's see. I feel like we need to have Jeopardy music or something.
I know. We've said that a lot about Zoom. We need background music. I mean, I could start singing, but then people might actively leave.
Okay. Can you see my screen, everybody?
Oh, yes.
Here we go.
Ooh, it's fun. Who will it be?
Cheryl.
Congratulations, Cheryl.
Awesome.
That's wonderful. Congratulations. Yeah, so you have won a pair of tickets to Trinity Rep's Gem of the Ocean by August Wilson. It's been getting really great reviews from all over, including Broadway World and all our local papers. So we're really excited about it, and I hope you enjoy it as well. So congratulations. Yeah. Yay. Okay. We will be in touch soon. Okay. So, I really wanted to thank PCL because it's been wonderful to collaborate with them, and this is such a cool program, and I'm glad we get to talk about this book in a semi-intimate way. We've been away from each other so long, and it's nice to have a book club and ways that we can just chat about it together. So I don't know how comfortable you feel, but if you want to turn on your camera so I can see your wonderful faces, that would be great too. And if you want to do it while you speak, I want to hear from you folks as well. So I'd love to just chat a little bit about August Wilson himself. Oh, great. See, I love all the faces. Welcome, everyone. Hello. So August Wilson. he was such an interesting man. He passed away in 2005. You know, and it's been very interesting being in the theater world and listening to folks who have met him, who have gone to plays with him, who have worked with him, and it's pretty remarkable, the stories that they've told me, and I feel grateful to know that. But I wanted to let you know a little bit more about the man. So he is a two-time Pulitzer Prize-winning August Wilson. He won for Fences and the Piano Lesson. He was born, Frederick August Kittle is his real name, on April 27th, 1945, to Mother Daisy Wilson, who was a cleaning woman, and his father, who was also named Frederick August Kittle. His father was a German immigrant and a baker. August was the fourth of 6 children, and he was the oldest. Wilson, he was largely self-educated, and you'll find out why very soon. You know, unfortunately, he dropped out of high school because he was accused of plagiarizing a paper about Napoleon Bonaparte. His teacher thought it was so well written that he couldn't have possibly written that paper. So he thought he had a little bit of help. And, you know, he was really, really offended by that. And I couldn't even imagine being accused of that. Wilson transferred through several school hallways as he faced racism and harassment at each and every school that he attended in Pittsburgh. But he was a voracious reader, y'all, and he spent much of his time in the Carnegie Library in Pittsburgh. Art, music, especially the blues, inspired him wildly, as he loved listening to recordings by iconic musicians like Bessie Smith, who you may remember in the book. He listens to Bessie Smith. Jelly Roll Morton. Wilson grew up during the time of the Black Power and Black Arts movement, and this made a profound effect on his writing. He was in the Army for 1 year, a very short stint. It didn't last too long. But Wilson met friend and collaborator Rob Penny through the Center Avenue Poetry Theater Workshop, and in 1968, they co-founded the Black Horizon Theater Workshop. It was a community-based Black nationalist theater company in the Hill District of Pittsburgh. Who has been to Pittsburgh? Has anyone been to Pittsburgh? Show of hands. A couple of folks? Okay. You know, I'm going to a conference. It's one of the first in-person ones that I'm going to in quite a long time, but I'm very excited because it is in Pittsburgh. So I'm going to go through the Hill District and take a lot of photos and kind of try and walk through what is left of that neighborhood as closely as it could have been during his time. Fortunately or unfortunately, a lot of it has not changed. And there's a particular address that is very important in many of his plays, which is 1839 Wiley Avenue. That is an actual place. And for the longest time, it was on a green hill with nothing on it. But within the last 2 years, folks are now putting something up to honor August Wilson. So it's been interesting to kind of see what's been building up. So I'm excited to go visit, not only visit the August Wilson Center. I'll report back for anyone who wants to know. So he loved his city, as you well know through this book and through his work. And he was one of the few, very few, to win an Oscar posthumously. Maybe this could be a question. Does anyone know? I don't have another prize. However, does anyone know what he won for? Which play, possibly? Does anyone want to guess? Take a stab at it. I'll give you a big hint. Oh, yes, very good. Fences. So he won an Oscar after his death for Fences, and it starred Denzel Washington and Viola Davis. Wilson won a Tony Award and a Pulitzer Prize for the 1983 play, which he later adapted into that screenplay. And when I talk about August Wilson, I saw a very interesting documentary. It's from 2019. If you have Netflix, certainly check it out. It's called Giving Voice. And in that, Denzel Washington spoke to Wilson's process. And he said, he talked about how he would shut the doors and close the blinds, and the characters would come into the room and tell him what to write. Wilson's powerful legacy does live on with us as we witness his work today. In an October 2005 announcement of Wilson's death, Backstage reflected that Wilson's plays were big, often sprawling and poetic, dealing primarily with the effects of slavery on succeeding generations of Black Americans. From turn-of-the-century characters who could remember the Civil War, to a prosperous middle class right about here at the end of the century who had forgotten the past. You know, this playwright's astonishing creation, it took more than 20 years to complete. It was remarkable not only for the commitment to a certain structure, which is one play for each decade, but for the quality of the writing. It was an absolutely unique achievement in American drama. Wilson himself reflected, the goal was to get them down on paper. He told the Associated Press during an April 2005 interview, as he was completing Radio Golf. It was the last play in the cycle. It was also Trinity's last Wilson play, produced prior to the pandemic. It was about a week. We closed on March 5th. Radio Golf closed on March 5th, and we closed our theater down for the pandemic 1 week later on the 12th. And Wilson said it was fortunate when I looked up and I found I had 2 bookends to go. I didn't plan it that way. I was able to connect the 2 plays. Wilson was referring to Gem of the Ocean. Chronologically, the first play in the cycle, although the 9th to be written. I've been asked this, and many folks have thought that Wilson wrote everything in order, and he most certainly did not. And it's very interesting to think about how he was inspired by different plays to then think about the characters, how they would be portrayed in 1904. It's very interesting to think about a character like an Aunt Esther, how she came to be. There was an interesting, if you're familiar with the whole cycle, there you'll see characters throughout the cycle come in and out, or maybe they're relatives. And you know, there's one particular story that I recall. Wilson himself was sitting down in the audience watching one of his plays, and there is the birth of someone named King. They gave the character the name King, and he said, that's a really heavy name. That's a large name to bear. So he wondered, what would it be like? What would life be like for that boy who was just born 35 years later? So then he wrote King Hedley II, an answer to that. It was very, very interesting about his way of kind of maneuvering through his characters. He would often sit at diners in Pittsburgh in the Hill District, and he just wanted to listen to characters. And a lot of those voices were voices that he felt would never be heard outside of that diner, outside of that restaurant. You know, he wrote about the cleaning woman. He wrote about the garbage man. He wrote about the singer, Ma Rainey, who for a long time was forgotten. He really wanted to lift up those voices that he felt like no one would care about. And often when I've read through this cycle, I would think about the Hill District is a small place. So you think about, are these characters, is it Ma Rainey walking past a character from the first play? They would have to have come together through a space. How were they interacting? I always think about that. And I'm glad he thought about that too. It makes me wonder if the man did not pass, what else would he have done with this work? I always think about that. So August Wilson's 10 play cycle, it does chronicle the Black experience in Pittsburgh's Hill District. I'll do another quiz without a prize. I'm sorry, I only had one prize. But does anyone know the one play that is set in a different place? It is set, well, maybe I shouldn't say. It is set in Chicago. I'll say that. Does anyone know which one? It's the only one that's not set in Pittsburgh. Not Two Trains Running, good guess. I'll give you a big hint. It was recently, it debuted.
Maureen.
Yes, very good. Excellent. I was about to say it's about a singer, and Viola Davis played her. Yes, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. Who has seen that film? Raise your hands. Ma Rainey? Great, great. If you haven't, I absolutely recommend it. They did an absolutely wonderful job. And, unfortunately, it is the last time we will see Chadwick Boseman on screen. He did an amazing job as a character named Levy, and really surprised some folks who had never seen him play quite a character like that before. He really knocked it out of the park, as he always does, and we missed him. I will say, during the pandemic, I tried to do a couple of COVID-safe driving trips. And one of the trips I made was to Washington, D.C. And I was walking around Howard University. And I mention this because Chadwick went there. And I was in front of the theater arts building, and they had a wonderful homage to him. And I just kept picturing him coming out of that theater space when he was there. And Felicia Rashad, who played Aunt Esther a couple of times now, she's now the dean there. And that is also the host of the August Wilson Society, which is really, really great. I'm forging a relationship with the August Wilson Society, and we're working through different events, so I'll most certainly let you know. One is actually going to be on March 31st, and I can send out more information if you want to come. We have a Wilsonian scholar coming to talk about August Wilson from the August Wilson Society. So we're really excited to have her. And I will mention, depending on the folks who don't see this and see the recording later, if you can see this, and I will send it electronically, Mixed Magic Theater, which is a really, really great local theater. One of the co-founders is starring in Gem of the Ocean right now, Ricardo Pitts-Wiley. The co-founders are Ricardo Pitts-Wiley and his wife, Bernadette Pitts-Wiley. We are doing a collaboration with them called The Wilson Way, an American icon. So we are having readings. One is tomorrow at Trinity Rep, and the other, if you'd like to join us at Mixed Magic Theater, if you are local, it's March 29th at 6 o'clock, and I can certainly send out information of that as well. But there'll be dramatic readings of 7 guitars, and then Caitlin Kedley the second, which will be really, really great. So, all right. I think I've said enough about the man. I really want to hear from you. And I see you have books in your hands. This is really great. So just a show of hands, who's seen Gem of the Ocean at Trinity? Just wondering. Oh, great. Okay. Any other folks planning to see it? We close the 27th. A couple of you. Oh, great, great. Okay, good. Who has seen Radio Golf at Trinity Rep? Oh, wonderful. Okay. I like asking this because, like I said, I didn't get to meet the man. Has anyone seen any play, prior to 2005? Some folks I've talked to have said, oh yeah, I used to go to the Huntington, and or I saw it on Broadway. Anyone? Just wondering. Okay. All right. Okay, great. So now on to the book. And like I said, this was a one-man show written by August Wilson, and it's about his life, what it was like being in Pittsburgh and how he learned what he learned. So there are a lot of you, so I want to make sure that you all get a chance, for those who do want to talk, you do get a chance to say something, but I can start and just talk about certain things that were notable to me. I'll start with a couple and then I'll let folks. Yeah, if you have something to say, just unmute yourself. You know, this is an intimate space. We can chat amongst ourselves and be in this group. So I guess I can start with something that was quite notable to me, was just the space where they lived. You know, his mother came from North Carolina to the Hill District in 1937. And he said at the time, you know, the neighborhood was pretty diverse. There were Jewish folks, Italians, Blacks, Syrians, Irish. But something struck me, and it's always interesting to think about each generation of immigrant that comes into the country. He talked about each ethnic group seeking to cast off the vestiges of their old country. I thought that was a very interesting way to put things, because so many folks are trying to assimilate. Other people are struggling during this time. They don't want to assimilate. Did anyone have any thoughts on that? Anyone?
Yeah, so I've been thinking a lot about like cultural and behavioral norms and how they persist. I'm actually in a Spanish class through the library, and one of the professors one day put up a photograph of like Salma Hayek getting a great role, and then Jackie Kennedy at the funeral of her husband. And Salma Hayek was like screaming, like she was so excited, but Jackie Kennedy was completely shut down. And I guess in Latin America, that image of Jackie Kennedy, people just did not get it. It's like, what's going on with this lady? Why is she so shut down? So I was thinking a lot about, you know, cultural norms and behavioral norms, how they get formed and how they persist. And I think you just spoke directly to that. Like, if people are trying to throw off the individuality of their culture that they brought here, then they are going to, right, in some way, change their behavior so that these things just continue.
Yeah, that's a great example. And I think about you know, characters in Wilson's plays. You know, you have folks who are they very much want to not think about our ancestors. Ancestors are a big theme in August Wilson's work. I can think of the play Joe Turner's Come and Gone. There's a character who, you know, they want to do a ritual. They want to do like an ancestral ritual, and he wants absolutely nothing to do with it. He said, that's not me. That's not what we do here. And he eventually kind of comes back and joins in the ritual, but he only does it one day a week. So you can see that he's struggling with that. So I thought that was very interesting. Anyone else have to say anything kind of just about the group that was there at the time? And you can just unmute, you don't have to put up your hands. Something else that really struck me here was, and I love Fred Rogers, but does anyone remember what Fred Rogers said to August Wilson? I see some folks trying to unmute.
He said, "You'll always be welcome in the neighborhood."
Yeah. And he said he never forgot that for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to say yes, something, Michael? Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was very prolific, you know, of him to say that, and kind of ahead of his time, so to speak, you know. So I also had a thought on, I think the play would have worked well if you had the characters, not just have a one-man show, but actually have the characters in the show as well. I wonder if they would ever stage it that way, you know.
I wonder. I've never heard of it being staged that way. But yeah, I would love to see some of those folks kind of appear.
Come to life, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Especially some of his friends, or some of the precarious things that he finds himself in, with his girlfriend who is married.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pittsburgh's an interesting place, and we all know Fred Rogers, and to think about the kindness that was offered in that moment. And I also think of Fred Rogers. He did something on television that was a gesture to show that Black folks could be in the same space as white folks. And I don't know if you know about this. Does anyone know what Fred Rogers did on television that was pretty notable?
Wasn't it when he had the mailman put his feet in the little baby pool with him?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I immediately thought of that when I read that. I said, of course he said you're welcome in this neighborhood, and of course he did that. And it's like you said, it's such a beautiful gesture, but it should be something that we would hope everyone would say, but that most certainly wasn't the case. Does anyone want to talk about what the Catholic Church did in this neighborhood? Does anyone remember?
Oh my gosh. Oh yeah. Oh my gosh.
I can give a hint. Don't feel bad.
I love this part, so I'll go ahead and jump in.
Sure.
The priest had told the parishioners that there was pretty much no reason to segregate, and going forward, the parishioners would include Black folks. And the very next Sunday, I suppose, everybody was gone except for 3 women. And that the Catholic Church had no idea that church had even existed, but what they realized was that people were gone because the tithes were gone. Mm-hmm. And I love that, not only for the 3 women and how August positions kind of why they stayed. He suggests that he gives them some credit, like it's in some way honorable that they stayed, and that's what everybody should have done. And he also kind of does this thing where he's like, well, they figured that if they could buy their cat food and they could live their lives, that everything was all right. So there was no kind of economic threat. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was such a fascinating kind of thread that pops up, the kind of the worth of a human being when they're tied to money or not. I love that little bit.
Yeah.
Anyone else have thoughts? Thank you. I only see Kay Brewster, so I just want to say thank you. What's your first name?
It's Kendra. I was trying to let me see if I can change it.
No worries. Yeah, thank you, Kendra. Michael?
Yeah, I love the fact how he says that the priest should have got a promotion, but I guess he got a demotion. That came up with the idea. Mm-hmm. But August says, no, he should have got a promotion because he was, again, like ahead of his time, and trying to change things up and think outside the box, and people are people,
Yeah.
So
I remember this in 1965.
Wow. Yeah, so that was
really
the start of it, yeah, so there were a lot of great stories in this play. I loved it. A lot of great stories.
Yeah. Before I go further, does anyone have a favorite story that they might want to talk about? There are a lot of them in here. A lot of interesting ones. Cheryl, go ahead.
I do. I liked this spoke to me. His way with language is just stupendous. but he talks about his mother. And because I'm supposed to go to her funeral. And those of you whose mothers are still alive, I do not envy you. There will come a day when you will suffer the most profound grief imaginable. That just hit home for me because I felt that profound grief, and he just put it in the best words to describe losing your mother.
Yeah. And his mother was, the anchor of that family. His father left a long time ago, and he disliked his father so much. He grappled with it a lot, but he disliked him so much that he just wanted to take his mom's name. He said, she raised me, she shaped me. I want to be more part of her. So I can only, imagine the pain of that. And I agree, Cheryl. His words are beautiful and poetic and needed. Yeah, thank you, Cheryl. Tara? Tara, you had your hand up?
Yes, sorry about that. I just wanted to say that I really enjoyed Something Is Not Always Better Than Nothing. The story about the spin queen that his mother won on the radio.
Yeah.
And then once they realized that she was Black, they tried to give her a certificate to the Salvation Army. But I really enjoyed that story because it really showed his mom's, tenacity, and her strength at, making sure that she still got what she deserved, and him going out and getting the 4 cents to help her, and they band together. And then at the end, he says, well, I won't tell you how I broke it. And that really, as a mom, a mother, and having brothers, I really was like, absolutely. Of course you did. Of course you broke it. It was just so beautiful. I really enjoyed that piece because it really just encompassed so much. It was like, it took their, their struggle. It showed their strength. It showed their love. And then for him to break it, it really just showed the humanity of just just the family, the unit. So that was all I really wanted to say. I appreciated that. Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you, Tara. Yeah, as someone who has 6 brothers, I can imagine
Wow.
him breaking it too. If they even went near it, but that's another story. Yeah, I love that because it showed, like you said, the tenacity and just her will, her drive. And you're going to treat me with respect. I'm going to get it my way.
Right.
I love that about her. Yeah. Thank you, Tara. Nancy?
Yeah, I just wanted to just reiterate and totally agree. She was such an amazing role model, for him, and then through extension for us, about respect, right? And that was beautiful too. So my favorite, one of my favorite stories was about the group that was listening to John Coltrane play in a club that was full of people who really didn't care that they were there, that John Coltrane was playing at the time. Like they were talking about, I think he said like buying a new Buick or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
And then there were like hundreds of people outside this club. And he said he actually felt that Coltrane was playing to them, right? And so I wrote it down. He said they were silenced by the power of art and the soaring music of John Coltrane and his exploration of man's connection to the divinity and the power of possibility of human life. So I just love that. I love that so much. And just also that he had to add at the end, and the power of possibility of human life. Like August Wilson just could not stop, with just that one phrase about Coltrane. He had to keep going. So I love that.
Yeah, I love that too. And as a musician, this particular piece really struck me when he said, see, John Coltrane is background music to them, but for the guys outside, they see it as their weapon. Music is their shield. And I feel that wholeheartedly. There's so much that, struck, like protest music, music for a loved one, whatever you are feeling, that is something that drives you. Yeah, I love that part. I love that part. Yeah.
Oh, thank you for that too.
Yeah. Does anyone remember another story I particularly love, about a saxophone? Anyone else playing the saxophone? Does anyone remember that part? Friend of his?
His friend Cy. Cy was my favorite character. I
Mhm.
love
Oh,
Cy.
yeah. Okay, I
Cy
remember
was,
that.
Yeah, you want to talk more about Cy, Diane?
yes, he was my favorite because that's how he just everything about him, from like just surviving, not knowing how to read. Who would have known that? And then some just things that he did, and people not realize, the mental health stuff was going on then, and also he touched on the homelessness, the stuff that's going on now as well. So Cy was my favorite.
Yeah, there are a lot of parallels to 1965 Pittsburgh and 2022 Providence, or anywhere else, or Detroit, or wherever. Like, you can pluck out these stories, and a lot of them, and like you said, Diane, the mental health piece. There's a lot that is still going on that I'll say, especially for myself, I'll speak, not to speak for my entire community by any means, but in the Black community, mental health is a stigma and people don't want to talk about it. And you shouldn't go to therapy. That's weak. What are you doing? We don't talk about that. Don't talk about my business, our family business.
Or also, not to cut you off, also they say, you have faith, don't you believe in God? But there's two different things here going on, two different things. You can have faith as well, go and reach out for therapy as well. And that's important.
Amen. Yep.
Yeah. And I do like how he says, don't be like Cy. Don't try to push your spirit out through a horn that you don't know how to play. Learn how to play the saxophone. See, Cy was John Coltrane in spirit, just didn't know how to play the saxophone.
Right.
I thought that was really great. Yeah.
I like Cy. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Yelly, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think Cy was the one who he asked August, I think. He's like, oh, I read this article. What's your take on it? And is that Cy? And then Cy would be, and then August or whomever he's talking to would kind of describe, his take on the article. And he learns later that was his way of learning things, because so I just loved how. And then he found out,
he survived. His survival.
Not allowing people to let him. He didn't let anyone know that he couldn't read, but at the same time he was able to. He was able to get the information he wanted and learn without kind of letting people know that. I thought that was I appreciated that,
Yeah. And, a lot of the characters, especially, I'd say the first 4 plays of August Wilson, there's usually 1 or 2 characters that do not know how to read. And like Gem of the Ocean, there's one particular character, Solly Two Kings is his name, and he asks a character named Black Mary if she can read the letters to him. He doesn't know how to read, but he's not shy about it. But there are, I don't want to give stuff away from other plays, but there are some who are. And I wonder if August Wilson has taken, a page from his friend Cy, who would kind of use different tricks and survival techniques to figure out how can he get by without people knowing. So I was thinking about that too with Cy. Yeah. Anyone else have? Michael, go ahead.
Yes, one of my favorite stories within the play was Willing to Die, about where he goes into a bank, he cashes a check for $750, and it's like they go in the back room, they have, he presents his ID, and because he's Black, of course, and this check, so they have to verify his ID. And then at the end of the transaction, when they finally say, okay, everything's in order, here's your money. And then he asks for an envelope. And she's like, oh, we don't have those here. you know. And then the following week, I guess he goes back to the same bank and gets a different teller. And he does the same, you know, at the end of the transaction, he says, "Oh, may I have an envelope, please?" And the teller says, "Sure, no problem," and gives him an envelope. And then he says, "Gee, it's funny, you know, I thought this bank didn't have envelopes. You know, I was told last week, you know, the bank didn't have envelopes." He, you know, he dropped it. He didn't think it was worth pursuing, but it just amazes me, even in this, because I can relate to this where it's happened to me, where I'll go in and one person will say one thing and another person says another. And I'm the type of person that would go down to the next teller and say, "Well, do you have an envelope at this window?" You know, because like I can relate to having that kind of drive that August had, where you don't stop at the first person. You don't take no for the first answer, so to speak. And I can relate so much to that because it's happened to me. Things like that have happened to me in my lifetime. So
yeah, and you know, it's utter disrespect. Wilson's case, it was certainly racism, and you know these things happen. You know, I had something fairly recent, and then the last year happened to me with a bank, them insisting I needed to get a deposit in a different way, and I said, "No, I have that money, and you're going to give me my money." And
Right.
if you watch the news, really recently, it was a couple of days ago. You know, speaking of the Chadwick Boseman connection, but the director of Black Panther, he went to Ryan Coogler. He also directed Creed. If you like boxing movies, I loved Creed.
yeah, I love Creed.
So he was taking out. It was a large number. It was $12,000, but it was from his own bank account. You know, he did the whole deposit slip and did everything right, and just said, "Hey, you know, because it's a large amount of money, can you just take it in the back and count it instead of, you know, in the bank they usually that counting machine that's so loud." And you know, yeah, and they arrested him.
Wow.
And then Bank of America ended up apologizing. I guess he was satisfied with their apology. They worked out whatever it was, but that was, I believe, 4 days ago. So, you know, it still happened.
I hadn't heard about that. Wow.
Yeah. Ryan Coogler, was with Bank of America. So, you know, that still happened.
It's hard to believe that in this day and age, that stuff like that still goes on. Like, what's it gonna take for things to change? You know, it's sad.
Yeah, 1965 versus 2022.
Right.
Yeah.
You know.
Kendra?
Just on that, I watched the video. That's exactly what I was thinking when I read that. And it reminds me of the thing that kind of what I was saying earlier. It's like the worth of a human being before and after like money is introduced. And thinking about Wilson, like the moment was literally about, am I gonna die? Am I gonna die over a piece of paper, 750 pieces of paper, or 751, including the envelope? And I think that's just such a powerful question or set of calculations to have to run for something as simple as drawing your own money out of the bank.
Yeah. And you know, him and tons of other people in that neighborhood and Black folks all around were dealing with a lot of the same things. Whether it was August one day, it could have been his neighbor the next, you know. And I think back to how he quit school and what he quit school over. For them saying, "This is way too good to be you. This can't be you. You must have cheated. You must have plagiarized this." Yeah. I wonder about that teacher who said that, and if they ever saw August Wilson plays later. I'd love to hear that story. I'd love to hear that story. Yeah. You know, thinking about the neighborhood again, he said something that really struck me. You know, he talked about, you know, back to the Catholic Church, how they scattered, and except the three ladies, And, you know, he said by 1965, the Hill District had 55,000 people. 54,997, and those three little old ladies. And, you know, he talked about it being like a third world country. And what really struck me, and I see it a lot in big cities where neighborhoods change so quickly, especially with gentrification. He said it was yet a 4-minute walk to downtown with a cornucopia of riches. And, you know, you see that in so many cities. Does anyone have maybe an example of something that you see that? I know most of you, it looks like most of you are coming in from Providence or that area, but or stories or things that you can think of where things are so close to you but so far away. Tara, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to comment because when I was reading that, he goes through the like 5 major drugstores. He rattles off all these things, liquor, like 155 liquor store.
Yeah.
And then he mentions one grocery store.
Yeah. Yep.
One grocery store out of all those. And I'm sorry, I don't have the book open in front of me to kind of, but I just remember thinking to myself, 5, you know, drugstores, 155 liquor stores, all these clothing stores, but only one. It's like it's a food desert, and it kind of just goes to show you, going back to what you were saying about mental health, but also, you know, our physical health in the Black community, why we have a lot of substance abuse. You know, I grew up in South Providence in the 80s and 90s. There are tons of liquor stores, right? You know, there's tons of liquor stores, but you've got to go about 5 miles. I mean, you might be able to hit Compare on Broad Street, you know, but there, you know, to get to Stop and Shop, to get to Whole Foods, you know, you've got to go further, obviously. The liquor store is going to be closer than the grocery store. So that was something that definitely stuck out to me when you're talking about the time, because if you kind of still go through South Providence and those areas, you do see that they are pretty much still food deserts. You know, they are lacking access to healthy, affordable foods. You know, we have come a long way as for getting farmers markets out there and such, but you know, there are ways that there could be improvements and better, but that stuck out to me.
Yeah. In my other work, I work, and I'm one, Black farmers, and working through what it's like to be in different neighborhoods. And, you know, the government gives it a name of a health equity zone, things that they want to improve on. So it is something like that, Tara, like a food desert. And you think about 1965, how much has changed and what was happening within this time. Right, asthma, lead poisoning, what was being placed in neighborhoods like the Hill District? What factories were placed there and not on the other side of time? You know, thinking about NIMBY, not in my backyard, but you could put it over there. That's fine over there. You think about, you know, they talk about generational wealth. I like to think about generational health or unhealth. You know, what that's done to different communities like the Hill District and, you know, the south side of Providence and other places, the Flint, Michigans, all those things that people deem okay because you are who you are, but it would never happen in another part of the city. Yeah. Anyone else have anything to say about any of that? A story I really enjoyed, it was a short one, but does anyone remember the name Barbara Peterson? It was very short, so it's okay if you don't remember. This struck me because it was an artist. She really wanted to get into Carnegie Mellon.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so she decided to become a model in the class, and she did the work, and she got in that way. And I love the quote that August said. He said, well, there's a way under, around, and through the door. So, you know, you are dealt these cards, but there's got to be another way. There's got to be another way. I kind of think of a cat, how they can like slither about. They'll get through. They'll push their way through that door and figure out a way through it.
There's
But I
more
love
than
that
one way to
there's
skin
way
a cat,
to figure
remember?
out. Yeah, true. And you know, it showed another, especially, you know, a woman as well, just trying to figure out how to get that opportunity. You're told no, let's figure it out. You're told no again, maybe we could do that. Same with that washer. She got her washer, but on her terms. So
Right.
I loved that too.
Mm.
Yeah. What about his friend Charlie? Anyone remember him? Diane?
I like Charlie. Charlie was what happened with Charlie when Charlie told August, don't say anything. And when he went on to, you know, and that's happens in the Black community. You know, I'm older, and that's happened, you know, years ago. People say, you don't say anything, you don't say anything. And that just refreshed my mind. You know, don't say anything. When he brought the guy to Charlie's house, and, you know, all that, except, you know, why did you, you know, and I wish he would have talked more about what happened with him and Charlie. But just like, I guess Charlie just never said nothing else to him, but Charlie's wife wanted to deal with him, went, you know, to go deal with him, you know, when she came after him with the knife and etc.
Yeah.
But, you know, but you don't say nothing, you don't say nothing, you know, you don't mind your business, keep your mouth shut. And didn't he say after a while, after that, it was in some part of the book where he stopped talking for a while because he said he didn't, I think it was when the guy got stabbed and he didn't want to say the wrong thing, because when you talk too much, you say the wrong thing and you get folks in trouble. You know, so, you know, just, you don't know, but just don't say nothing. Turn your head, mind your business. And it's something, you know, that has pros and cons to it as well.
Yeah.
Probably more cons. But.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I like the love that Charlie showed August, in the sense like he didn't want him to have drugs.
Oh,
Do you
yes,
remember when you know, he was heroin and everything else under the sun, and he threatened the other man who tried to give August drugs, and he said, man, that's August, you don't do that to him. So, you know, he knew the pain and the struggle of what he was going through. He didn't want that for August. So he was showing love in that way too. And I feel like
He
we
protected
do that a lot
August.
in our communities too. Yeah, protecting. No, don't go that way.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing right now, but I want something better for you. I want something better for you. So I loved that he did that. Yeah, yeah. Are there other folks I haven't heard from that want to say anything about the book too, before we a couple of folks? Diane, were you going to say something else? I didn't want to cut you off.
It was just that in that era, coming up in that era, everything was just so fresh to me, because I was 10 years old in 1965. But then the more he got old, you know, it's just that whole, everything was just so live and real. And then also I wanted to say before, when the incident that happened at the bank, that just goes to this day and age right now. Like, as Black, we talk about Black Lives Matter. I'm not going off the going down a different lane, but like Black Lives Matter, we should keep it up as not as a moment, but as a we just do it as a moment, but it's a movement. That's what I'm saying. It's a movement. It's not a moment. It's a movement into something happens, because things like that are constantly happen in this day and age. Like, you had an incident at the bank and stuff, and then he went all the way back in that age. They had, and that's all racism.
Yeah.
You know, that's still, and it's just prevalent to this day, and it's sad.
And I think about, if you don't know your past, you don't know your future.
Absolutely.
And now, you know, August Wilson is one of our ancestors. May he rest in peace. Yes. Like, I feel like this is teaching us a lot, even in this time too. And one thing, and I think some people have either heard this or seen it happen, but I did want to mention, when he was at the Huntington Theater in Boston, someone came up to him and said, "Mr. Wilson, you know I don't see color." And he said he was so tired of hearing that. He pointed to the next appointment he could see and said, "Did you tell the gentleman that over there?" So
Yeah.
he talked about things like that a lot, and just things he encountered. Once he became that famous playwright, kind of his stories changed a little bit, but did they?
Right.
He's dealing with a new crop of characters sometimes. But
What was
we're
his
running-
big break?
His big break was Ma Rainey, and people loved that show, and it ended up going to Broadway. But he was a poet for the most part prior to that. He would do different poetry slams. They were also called just poetry workshops back in the day as well. But he started as a poet, and then he just felt like he wanted to start telling these stories. And he never quite set out, he said at first, he never quite set out to do this century cycle. He said it kind of just started happening, and he started to figure out, well, how am I going to talk about, I saw a great interview with Charlie Rose from the late mid-90s. And he was saying, oh yeah, I got to write that one about the first generation, like 1904. So he hadn't written Gem of the Ocean yet. So you think like, wow, he still hasn't written this beautiful, amazing play yet. But he was like, yeah, I'm thinking about a couple of things and I might put from this and that. So he never quite set out to do it at first, but he felt like, and he said this many times, he felt like ancestors and folks like Denzel, I said at the beginning, these ancestors and people were just talking to him and these characters came about. So it's a pretty astonishing, like I said, creation that he did. So it looks like we're running out of time, but I just wanted to read one thing, if that's okay. Are we totally off time? Okay. So it's the last part of the book, and I just love it. So, yet I do not stand here and say that we are African Americans are victims, but rather both Black and white are victims of our history and our victimization. It leaves us staring across each other a great divide of economics, privilege, and the unmitigated pursuit of happiness. We are not Black by accident of our births. Our births are a moment of profound creativity engineered by our genetic muscle, and it aspires towards perfection. We are what we are made by old things, come back, clearly, brilliant as the sun. Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, Fences, Joe Turner's Come and Gone, The Piano Lesson, 2 Trains Running, 7 Guitars, Jitney, King Hedley II, Gem of the Ocean, Radio Golf, August Wilson. I love the ending. Yeah. Thank you all. This was wonderful. It went by
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Michelle.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
So before everyone runs off, I want to send a big thank you to Michelle and Trinity for hosting, for raffling off tickets, for doing that beautiful talk and that lovely reading at the end. That was powerful. Next month, we're going to virtually travel to the Mount Pleasant Library, and we are going to be reading Native Providence, a virtual author talk with Patricia Rupenton. So we'll have a nice author talk in presence for that one. And lovely Lee will be co-hosting that one since Mount Pleasant is his home library. He's going to put the link in the chat, so anyone wants to sign up for that one, they can do that now. And 2 other fun happenings coming up in April is we have a virtual conversation with a local business owner, Amber Jackson. She owns Black Leaf Tea. So we're going to have a tea and community virtual conversation with her, and you can get the tea kits. Cool. Delicious tea and a tea ball to make your tea, and you can do them. Some libraries are doing in-person events, and other libraries are just having you take your tea home. So sign up for that as well. That's on Thursday, April 7th. And Lee and I are also hosting an in-person poetry workshop series. So it's called Why Poetry, and it's just all about why you would be a poet and
It goes through methods on how to do that. It's Tuesday nights at Mount Pleasant and Thursday nights at Washington. Okay, thanks everyone. So great to see everyone. And I'll make sure to we'll make sure to share Michelle's information about Mixed Magic Theater and any of the other events that she was talking about.
Yeah, I'd love to see you. Love to see you at Gem of the Ocean. And let me know if you want to go see Gem of the Ocean. Yeah, we'd love to see you there. Thank you so much.
All right, thank
Great
you.
meeting you all.
Good night.
All right, good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.